I am 79 years old, and yesterday morning I logged into my bank account to look at a number that used to make me feel like a king, but now just makes me feel like the poorest man on earth. The balance read $3,422,000 and some change. I have spent my entire adult life obsessed with watching that number grow, protecting it, nurturing it, and worshiping it like a God that would one day grant me eternal happiness. I starved myself of joy for 50 years to build that fortune. I said no to vacations. I said no to dinners out. I said no to the people I loved because I was terrified of being poor in my old age. Well, here I am. I am old, I am rich, and I am sitting in a 5-bedroom house that is completely silent because there is absolutely no one left to share it with. I won the game of finance, but I lost the game of life. And the worst part is that I didn't even realize I was losing until the clock ran out. You need to understand that this obsession didn't start out of malice or greed. It started out of fear. I grew up with nothing. My father was a good man, but he was bad with money. And I remember the nights when the electricity got cut off or when my mother would pretend she wasn't hungry so there would be enough food for me and my sister. I made a vow when I was 22 years old, standing in a rundown apartment with peeling wallpaper, that I would never be in that position again. I swore that I would build a fortress of money so high that the world could never touch me. I got a job in corporate sales, and I attacked it with a ferocity that scared people. I was the first one in the office at 6 in the morning, and I was the last one to leave at 9 at night. I didn't just work hard. I worked constantly. I viewed every hour not spent earning money as a wasted hour. I viewed every dollar spent on pleasure as a betrayal of my future self. I met my wife, Sarah, when I was 25. She was the most patient woman God ever created. She had a laugh that could fill a room, and she loved to travel. She had this dream of seeing Italy, of sitting in a cafe in Florence and drinking wine and watching the people go by. I told her we would go. I promised her, but I said we had to wait. I told her that we needed to hit a net worth of 100,000 first. Then when we hit that, I moved the goalpost to 500,000. I told her that compound interest was the 8th wonder of the world, and that if we just sacrificed now, we could live like royalty later. I use that word all the time. Later. Later was this magical place where we would finally start living. Later was where we would be happy. Later was where I would stop checking my work email during dinner. I remember my 30th birthday. Sarah threw me a surprise party. She invited friends I hadn't seen in years. I walked into the house, saw everyone there, and instead of feeling loved, I felt anxious. All I could think about was the project I needed to finish for a client. I spent half the night on the phone in the garage, pacing back and forth, closing a deal while my friends ate cake inside. Sarah came out at one point, her eyes sad, and asked me to just come in for 10 minutes. I snapped at her. I told her that this deal was going to pay for our future children's college. I told her I was doing this for us. I truly believe that. I thought that love was providing security. I didn't understand that love is actually presence. I went back inside eventually, but the mood was dead. My friends left early. I went to bed feeling virtuous because I had secured the contract. I didn't see the crack in the foundation of my marriage that I had just created. By the time I was 40, I was a machine. We had 2 children, Michael and Emily. I provided them with everything they needed materially. They went to the best schools. They had braces. They had safe cars when they learned to drive. But they didn't have a father. They had a financier. I missed baseball games because of quarterly reviews. I missed school plays because of business trips. I remember one specific Tuesday evening when Michael asked me to help him build a model airplane. He was 10 years old. He was so excited. I looked at him, and then I looked at my briefcase, and I did the math in my head. I calculated that an hour of my time was worth $400, and building a toy plane didn't make financial sense. I told him to ask his mother. I watched his face fall. The light went out of his eyes. I told myself I was teaching him independence. I told myself that one day when I left him a massive inheritance, he would understand and thank me. I was so wrong. He didn't want my money. He wanted my time. The decades blurred together into a gray smear of airports, conference rooms, and spreadsheets. I became addicted to the saving. I tracked our net worth on a graph that I updated every single Friday. Seeing that line go up gave me a rush of dopamine that nothing else could match. We were millionaires by the time I was 50, but we still lived like we were broke. I drove a 10-year-old car that rattled when it went over 40 miles an hour. I wore suits until they frayed at the cuffs. When Sarah wanted to renovate the kitchen, which hadn't been touched in 20 years, I showed her the spreadsheet. I lectured her about opportunity cost. I showed her that if we invested that $30,000 instead of spending it on cabinets, it would be worth $200,000 in 20 years. She just looked at me with this tired expression and walked away. She stopped asking for things after that. She stopped asking for trips. She stopped asking for my time. I thought this was a victory. I thought she was finally getting with the program. I didn't realize she had just given up on me. My relationship with my children deteriorated in my 50s. Michael moved across the country and barely called. Emily stayed closer, but our conversations were strained. She would come over for Sunday dinner, and I would grill her about her 401k. I would criticize her husband for buying a new car. I would lecture them about their spending habits until they stopped coming over. I told Sarah they were ungrateful. I said, "Look at everything we've built for them. Look at this safety net." I felt like a martyr. I felt like the only sane person in a world of reckless spenders. I was proud of my discipline. I looked down on my colleagues who took vacations to Hawaii or bought boats. I called them fools. I whispered to myself that I would have the last laugh. I would be the one retiring in luxury while they were still working. Then came the plan for the grand retirement. That was what I called it. I was going to retire at 65. We were going to finally take that trip to Italy. We were going to buy a cottage by the lake. We were going to do everything we had put off for 40 years. I had the date circled on the calendar. I had the budget perfectly calculated. We had $3 million. We were safe. We were invincible. The week before my 65th birthday, I finally signed the papers to leave the firm. I came home with a bottle of champagne, the first frivolous thing I had bought in years. I walked into the kitchen to find Sarah on the floor. It was a massive aneurysm. She was gone before the ambulance even arrived. Just like that. The person I had been saving for, the person I was finally going to spend my time with. She was dead. I stood in the hospital hallway holding her purse, and I felt the entire universe collapse on top of me. The doctor came out and said words like sudden and painless, but I couldn't hear him. All I could hear was the roaring silence of the 40 years I had wasted. I thought about Italy. I thought about the kitchen she wanted to renovate. I thought about the thousands of nights I stayed late at the office while she ate dinner alone. I had $3 million in the bank, and I couldn't buy her one more breath. I couldn't buy a single second to say, I'm sorry. The funeral was a blur. My children came, and they were polite, but they were distant. They cried for their mother, but they looked at me like I was a stranger. I tried to talk to Michael after the service. I told him I wanted to help him with his mortgage. I tried to use money to bridge the gap because that's the only tool I knew how to use. He looked at me with red eyes and said, Dad, I don't need your money. I just wish you had been around. He walked away, and he didn't look back. That was 14 years ago. I see them maybe once a year now. They have their own lives, their own families, and I am not a part of them. I am just a line item in their future inheritance. The awakening didn't happen all at once. It was a slow, agonizing realization that settled over me in the empty house. I retired, just like I planned. I had all the time in the world, but I had no one to spend it with. I went to Italy alone a year after Sarah died. I sat in a cafe in Florence just like she had wanted. I ordered a glass of wine, and I wept. I wept in front of strangers. I wept because the wine tasted like ash. I realized that the joy wasn't in the location. It was in the shared experience. Without her, the Colosseum was just a pile of rocks. The canals of Venice were just dirty water. I came home early. I spent my 70s trying to find meaning in the numbers, but the magic was gone. I would log into my brokerage account and stare at the balance, and I felt nothing but nausea. That money represents every missed birthday. It represents every canceled anniversary. It represents the distance between me and my son. It represents the loneliness that greets me every morning when I wake up. I live in this big house, and I keep the heat turned down low out of habit, saving pennies I don't need to save. I walk through the empty rooms, and I see ghosts. I see the ghost of the 10-year-old boy holding a model airplane. I see the ghost of my wife holding a travel brochure. I see the ghost of my younger self, hunched over a desk, thinking he was winning. I have tried to change in these last few years. I tried to buy my way back into people's lives, but it doesn't work that way. Relationships are like plants. You can't neglect them for decades and then expect to revive them by dumping a truckload of fertilizer on them in the afternoon. They are dead. The roots are withered. I have a gardener who comes twice a week. I talk to him more than I talk to my own grandchildren. He listens because I pay him. That is the transaction I have reduced my life to. I have started giving money away to charities, but even that feels hollow. It feels like I'm trying to pay a fine for my sins. I sit on park benches and watch young fathers playing with their kids. I want to grab them by the shoulders and shake them. I want to scream at them. I see a young man on his phone checking his emails while his daughter is pulling on his sleeve, trying to show him a flower she found. I see myself in him. I see the impatience in his eyes. I see him calculating, planning, worrying about the future while the present moment is slipping through his fingers like sand. So this is my redemption, if you can call it that. I am speaking to you now. I am telling you the truth that the financial gurus won't tell you. They tell you to save until it hurts. They tell you to sacrifice everything for the golden years. They are lying to you. There are no golden years. There is only now. The future is a concept. It is a hope. It is not a guarantee. I am living the scenario that every financial planner tells you to aim for. I am wealthy. I am secure. I will never run out of money. And I am telling you, it is not worth it. The price I paid was too high. The only peace I find now is in small, authentic moments that cost nothing. I sit in my backyard and listen to the birds. I read books from the library. I stop checking the stock market. I don't care if the market crashes tomorrow. I don't care if inflation goes up. None of it matters. I have learned 50 years too late that the only currency that has any real value is time, and you cannot save it. You can only spend it, and once it is spent, it is gone forever. You cannot hoard it in a 401k. You cannot invest it and watch it grow. It is evaporating every single second. Listen to me, and listen closely. If you are sitting there thinking that you will be happy when you have $1 million, you are wrong. If you are thinking that you will make it up to your spouse later, you are wrong. If you are missing your children's lives to pay for their future, you are making a mistake that will haunt you until your dying day. Do not be me. Do not wait. Take the trip. Buy the ice cream. Turn off the phone. Go home to your partner and look them in the eye and listen to them. Really listen to them. I would trade every single dime of this $3 million to go back to that Tuesday evening with Michael and build that model plane. I would give it all away to have one dinner with Sarah where I wasn't thinking about work. But I can't. The deal is done. The ledger is closed. I have my money and I have my regrets, and that is all I have. Please, for the love of God, do not make the same trade I did. Live your life now. Don't save it for a later that might never come. Don't be the richest man in the graveyard. Be the man who lived. Be the man who loved. Be the man who was there. That is true wealth. Everything else is just numbers on a screen.